This week's chapter brought us the newly updated NEL rankings, and the community does not seem to be happy about them. That, alongside more confirmations for the PXG match, just make this chapter super hyped, and I really cannot wait for this upcoming match. What's going on, everyone? It's Animasu here, as always, with another weekly chapter review. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Blue Lock chapter 246, titled Irregularity. I'm sure you already know the vibes, but if you enjoy the content I push out and would like to support your local Blue Lock YouTuber, please make sure that you're subscribed to the channel, commenting on my videos, and even check out my community Discord down in the description. As always, I hope you have an amazing day, and please enjoy the video. The intro text for today's chapter says, "A secret training done by the two, getting over this adversary to prove their values." Now, the whole training and proving their values thing is actually in reference to Igaguri and Kiyora Jin, who we can both see training with one another on this first page. Both of these players currently lack any value or even a position on the leaderboard, so if they want to make the top 23, they're going to really need to pull out all the stops. With Kiyora Jin then charging forward, cutting straight past his opponent, Igaguri is left falling on the ground like an actual NPC. I know for a fact that bro's tailbone is going to be sore after that one. Adamant to still continue on, however, Igaguri and Kiyora both agree to continue forth training. Interestingly enough too, Noah seems to be watching over them from the corner of the room. He's already confirmed and promised Kiyora Jin a place in this upcoming match, so where do you guys think that Igaguri will fit into this huge matchup, if he does at all? Anyways, with the chapter then flashing over to the Germany Stratum monitoring room, pretty much all of Bastard München can be seen gathered around. The new NEL salaries and auction rankings are about to be revealed, as the 7th and 8th matches have finally come to a close. Yukimiya and Gagamaru even go on to point out how this is the last match for Italy's Ubers, which also means this is Barou's last bid evaluation. As we then see Isagi's determined dice, however, he seems to not be worried about Barou in the slightest, as the true important thing is to be in the top 23. 5th to 23rd place is then shown with a rankings board, as it's once again clarified that only the top 23 players will become U20 Japan members. Let me know if you guys would like to see a video talking more in depth about the bidding system, because a lot of people seem to be super unhappy with some of the values. For example, Chigure hardly leaped up, although being Mantran's most consistent threat. Meanwhile, Fukaku Gen is over here leaping up to nearly Gagamaru's value. Moving on to 24th through 35th here, some of the notable people nearing the top 23 are Nanase, who's only one place away, and also Nero from Bastard Munich, who I'm really expecting to be in the lineup against PXG. Sendo is obviously shown too to be hyped, as his previous goals boosted him to 13th place, however other players aren't so well off. Nanase looks to be terrified, as he's just one place out at 24th, and Ryusei too is worried, as he's just made the cut barely at 23rd. They're not the only ones worried about their values though, because Nagi and Reo are still continuing to drop in the rankings. Being 11th and 15th place, Reo and Nagi are both aware that something really needs to change, or else they will continue to plummet downward. The top 4 are then finally shown, with 4th place firstly being Shidou Ryusei. With a 100 million yen offer from PXG, Shidou has an extra creepy smile on his face today, as the number 1 spot is now in range for him. 2nd and 3rd actually happen to be an ironic tie between Isagi, Yoichi, and Barou, who both respectively have 150 million yen offers from their clubs. Honestly, Barou took this a lot lighter than I expected, considering he knows that Isagi's going to be higher than him in the end due to having one more upcoming match. Now obviously the only person Isagi Yoichi happens to care about now is none other than Itoshi Rin, who resides once again in 1st place with a now larger offer of 198 million yen. Having one final match against PXG and only being 48 million away, Isagi for once has a clear shot at the number 1 spot in Blue Lock. With that, Noah actually walks into the monitoring room as everyone turns their heads. The conditions are now clearly set. Noah reminds them all that the ones just barely making it or past the line only have this one final shot to make a comeback. Most notably, Ryusei is just barely making it at 23rd and is shown, and Nero too, who isn't even in the top 23 making an appearance. This possibly hints at some upcoming relevance for him. Like I said, I expect him to play. Noah then goes on to clarify that the purpose of the final match will be different for each individual, as some are aiming to stay alive, while others are aiming for the top. To those looking to ascend though, he reminds them that their goal as a team is one. Show your ability through being calm and rational, which should then lead Bastard Munich to their flawless victory. With everyone gathered around and all eyes on Noah, he announces that they'll now begin to plan for their final matchup. I also think his words here about aiming for the top could have some further implications about Kaiser, because although I trust in him to secure at least one goal, he could also be the reason BM lose due to his hatred and continuous interference of Isagi. Anyways, the chapter then changes over to Francis PXG's locker room, where everyone seems to be hydrating and recovering from their match against BARCHA. Their head coach Julian Loki can be seen reviewing their stats on a tablet, as he's cooking up some feedback for each player as usual. First up being Itoshi Rin, he managed to put 3 out of 4 shots into the goal, obviously having insane accuracy and a favorable chance to score. Loki's suggestion is simply for him to take more shots. Now as for Shidou Ryusei, this man has taken a total of 12 shots, with only 3 being on-target goals. Loki obviously first suggests for him to improve his quality of shooting, while also telling him to broaden his horizons, most likely implying that he needs to work on shooting outside of the box. He then goes on to give a more simplistic advice to everybody else, such as Karasu needs to win more duels, Santetsu needs to practice his sprints, and Tokimitsu needs to work better with the backline. Also, interestingly enough, Loki goes on to single out Ness here, who happens to be in 24th, telling him that he just needs to get better at his touch and ball handling. Charles can also be seen in the background here trying to sneak away, but Loki is not going to let that slide. Hitting the ball straight into his face, Julian Loki then takes on a serious look, as he reminds Charles that he hasn't given him his own homework yet. Charles responds, however, telling Loki that his meetings are just always too long, suggesting that maybe he should take it a bit easier. We then get some interesting context about Loki and Charles though, as Loki explains that the reason Charles is even in the NEL is so that he can make him grow up. Loki apparently requires an elite passer to make him the best in the world, and he believes the 15-year-old Charles to have that talent. Being even younger than Loki, Charles happens to still lack experience, but Loki still wants him to represent France alongside him while becoming the best in the world. The whole time Loki is yapping here though, Charles is covering his ears while refusing to listen, even mouthing to Tokimitsu to let him know when Loki's done. Crouching down and continuing to lecture him, Loki tries to explain that he brought him to the NEL to learn and grow. Charles, however, is now making noises to literally drown out the sound of Loki, truly acting like the most immature 15-year-old I've ever witnessed. He even goes on to crack a smile at Loki, explaining that he's not interested in following any instructions due to his devious mind. This kid really thinks he's a Black Air Force menace at such a young age. This new generation might just be cooked. Loki then goes on to tell Charles to just not listen to him anymore then, which then somehow leads Charles to want to listen. This makes more sense with the straight Japanese kana, because instead of devious mind, it uses a word to describe Charles, which more so meant someone who does the opposite of what they're told. Anyways, Loki then goes on to actually address the whole team here. He explains how so far, they fought with 2 different systems and have been experimenting with them built around both Itoshi Rin and Shidou's specialties. This was actually all just to experiment and test Charles' abilities, as practicing with 2 opposing strikers could really improve his versatility. This then led to other members on PXG either adapting to the system or finding their own way to appeal, which elevated each of them to a new level. Their last opponent, however, coming up is Bastard München, who being led by NEL Noah, is a team that's won every game just like PXG. Their formation even reflects the way NEL Noah thinks, as BM is spearheaded by both Isagi Yoichi and Kaiser together. In the super badass panel here, the Bastard München system is visually displayed with Isagi's side of the system and Kaiser's. These 2 systems both exist and compete on the same field at the same time, resulting in what Loki calls a gear shift weirdo system. PXG, however, have been using their own way of operating, being 2 different systems for both Rin and Shidou. Every 15 minutes they would exchange which systems they used, giving each team equal opportunity to prove their worth. With an intense look in his eyes, however, Loki states that being weird here might be more interesting. Charles seems to understand what this means, as Loki simply nods his head in confirmation. PXG will also operate with their own weirdo formation next match, meaning that Itoshi Rin and Shidou Ryusei will play and coexist, just as Isagi and Kaiser do. Shidou and Rin acknowledge this to be exactly what it is, a 4-way monster battle allowing them to go crazy with no safeguards at all in place. I think he meant him at 5-way because Kunigami still has to spin back, but we'll just look over that. Even Loki says that the difficulty to execute this will be maximum, as they'll need to tame, utilize, and adapt to the dual monsters of Rin and Shidou. As Loki announces this to be their last team homework before attempting to win against BM, everyone can be seen here with serious, determined looks on their faces. Well, at least everyone except for Charles, who's still covering his ears and not listening at all. Anyways, the outro text here says, this next part will feature self-formation, using Germany's own weirdo shift formation to battle them head to head. Bring about a fresh chemistry between the dual threats of both Itoshi Rin and Shidou Ryusei. Now I'm really curious what you guys think a chemical reaction between Rin and Shidou would look like, because the possibilities for a super goal there are just truly endless. With that, all we're left with is the upcoming chapter 247 title, being Originality. Now I kinda believe that this has to be in reference to Bastard München's formation talk or Isagi now, because it clearly outlines Rin and Shidou as an irregularity and abnormality. Isagi, however, seems to always be following his own original and self-adapted path, just as we saw with him gambling against even Noah himself to bring Hiyori in the game. Noah might even talk to Isagi and take his thought process into consideration when making this new lineup, but we'll just have to wait and see. As always, I just want to thank you all so much for supporting the channel. If you enjoy the content I push out and would like to help me keep cranking out these videos, please be sure and check that you're subscribed to the channel, commenting on my videos, and even check out my community Discord down in the description. I hope you all continue to have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next upload.